Caleb Holt, a 29 years old proud ranch heir who wants to inherit Holt Ranch and keep it in his family. But the will says Caleb can't inherit unless he runs the ranch with his brother Luke for 6 months, and Caleb hates Luke. Caleb Holt's hand did not shake. The gun did not shake, but his chest did. He stood inside the small parlor with the black curtains and the sad smell of flowers. His father's coffin sat in the next room like a heavy stone the world could not move. And right in front of Caleb, right where Caleb did not want him, stood Luke Holt. Luke, the brother who left. Luke, the brother who ruined everything. Before we continue the story, if you are new to my channel, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification icon so that you will be the first to be notified anytime I upload a new story. But don't forget to comment where you are listening from, and also share this story with your friends. Let's continue. Caleb kept the pistol low, but the message was clear. One step, one wrong word, and the room could turn into hell. Luke held both hands up, slow, not like a man begging, like a man trying not to scare a wild animal. Caleb, Luke said. His voice was rough, like it had been scraped by wind for years. Put it away. Caleb's jaw tightened. Say one reason, Caleb said, why I shouldn't put you on the ground right now. Luke's eyes flicked toward the coffin room, then back to Caleb. Because Dad is right there, Luke said softly. And because I came back for him, not for you. That word, Dad, hit Caleb like a punch, because Dad was gone, gone for good. And Caleb had not even gotten to say the last words he needed to say. He had been too proud, too busy, too sure there would be more time. Now there was no time. Only this. Caleb took a step forward. Luke did not step back. That made Caleb even angrier. Funny, Caleb said. You vanish for years. Then you show up on the day of the will reading, like a buzzard. Luke's mouth twitched, like he wanted to smile but couldn't. I didn't know the will was today, Luke said. I only heard Dad died. Caleb's grip tightened. So you heard, Caleb said, and you came running. Luke looked tired, older than his age. His beard had dust in it like the trail never left him. I came, Luke said, because he was our father. Caleb almost laughed. Our father? Caleb snapped. You stopped saying our the day you accused me of stealing cattle. Luke's eyes flashed. I didn't accuse you, Luke said. Caleb's heart slammed hard. Yes, you did, Caleb said. You stood in the yard and screamed it so the hands could hear. You told Dad. You told the sheriff. You told the whole county. Luke swallowed. Caleb leaned in, voice low and sharp. And then you ran away, Caleb said. You left me to carry it. You left me to carry Dad's hate, too. Luke's hand slowly lowered, not in threat, more like he was tired of holding them up. I didn't run, Luke said. Caleb's laugh came out like a bark. Then what did you do? Caleb said. Float away. Luke stared at Caleb for a long beat. I left, Luke said, because I couldn't breathe in this place anymore. Caleb's eyes burned. You mean you couldn't stand being wrong, Caleb said. Luke's shoulders rose and fell. You want the truth? Luke asked. Caleb's stomach tightened. He did want the truth, but he also feared it. Do I say it? Caleb said. Luke's voice lowered. The night the cattle went missing, Luke said. I thought it was you. I thought I saw you ride out. Caleb's face went cold. You thought, Caleb repeated. Luke nodded once. And when I realized I might be wrong, Luke said, it was too late. Dad already looked at you like you were a stranger. Caleb felt something twist inside him. Too late. Those words tasted like poison. Before Caleb could speak, a thin man cleared his throat behind a desk. Gentlemen, the man said, please. Caleb had almost forgotten he was there. The man was the lawyer. Mr. Pritchard, a small man with gray hair and careful hands. He looked like he hated loud voices and loved clean paper. Mr. Pritchard glanced at Caleb's pistol. "Mr. Holt," Mr. Pritchard said, "I must ask you to put the weapon away. This is a legal matter." Caleb did not move. Mr. Pritchard swallowed. "Your father's last wishes," Mr. Pritchard added, "cannot be read if someone is about to be shot." Luke gave a short breath through his nose. "I'd like to hear Dad's last wishes," Luke said, "before Caleb kills me." Caleb's eyes snapped to Luke. "You think this is funny?" Caleb hissed. Luke shook his head. "No," Luke said. "I think it's sad." Sad? Caleb hated that word. Caleb pushed the pistol into his belt and covered it with his coat. "Read," Caleb said. Mr. Pritchard looked relieved, like he had been holding his breath for a week. He opened a folder. The paper inside looked thick and important, like it had weight. "Today," Mr. Pritchard said, "Mom, we are here to read the last will and testament of Henry Holt." Hearing his father's name out loud made Caleb's throat tighten. Henry Holt, the man who built the ranch from raw dirt. The man who taught Caleb how to ride, shoot, and never beg. The man who died without saying goodbye. Mr. Pritchard read a few lines about small things. A saddle to a cousin, a pocket watch to an old friend. Caleb barely heard any of it. He watched Luke's face instead. Luke's eyes were on the desk, but his fingers kept rubbing the same spot on his palm, like an old habit from stress. Caleb told himself he did not care. But he did. Because Luke looked like a man who had not slept right in years. Mr. Pritchard turned a page. "Now," he said carefully, "we come to Holt Ranch." Caleb's spine straightened. This was it. This was the whole point. The ranch was everything. The land, the cattle, the water rights, the house, the barns, the brand that meant something in this county. If Caleb got it, Caleb would be set for life. If Caleb lost it, he didn't even want to think about that. Mr. Pritchard cleared his throat again, slower this time. "In the event of my death," Mr. Pritchard read, "I leave Holt Ranch to my sons, Caleb Holt and Luke Holt, under one condition." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "One condition?" Luke's head lifted fast. "One condition?" Luke repeated. Caleb's pulse sped up. Why would Dad put a condition on Caleb? Caleb had stayed. Caleb had worked. Caleb had bled for that land. Luke had left. Luke had done nothing. Mr. Pritchard continued. "My sons must run Holt Ranch together," Mr. Pritchard read, "as equal partners, on for 6 months from the date of this reading." Caleb stared. He did not blink. The words did not fit in his head at first, like a key that would not turn. Then they hit. Together. Equal partners. 6 months. Caleb took one step toward the desk, slow, like he might crush the paper with his boots. "That's not real," Caleb said. Mr. Pritchard's face stayed stiff. "It is real," he said. "It is written clearly." Luke's mouth opened slightly. "Equal?" Luke whispered. Caleb's hands curled into fists. "No," Caleb said. "No, Dad wouldn't do that." Mr. Pritchard read on, voice steady. "If either son refuses," he read, "or if either son leaves Holt Ranch before the 6 months ends, the ranch and all holdings will be sold. The money will be given to the Territorial Children's Home." Caleb's vision flashed white. Sold? The ranch sold? To strangers? The Holt brand erased? Caleb couldn't breathe for a second. Then anger filled his lungs like fire. He slammed his palm on the desk so hard the ink bottle jumped. "That old man," Caleb started. He stopped, because calling his dead father names in front of the coffin room felt like stepping on a grave. But the anger didn't stop. It grew. Mr. Pritchard flinched, but kept reading. Additionally, he read, a ranch judge will arrive within 7 days to witness the partnership and sign the agreement. If the judge is not satisfied that the partnership is real, the sale will proceed. Caleb's head snapped up. A judge? Caleb said. A ranch judge? Mr. Pritchard nodded. A man appointed for these cases, he said, to prevent false agreements. Caleb looked at Luke, eyes blazing. So Dad chained me to you, Caleb said. And if I don't smile while he does it, the ranch burns. Luke's face was pale now. I didn't ask for this, Luke said. Caleb laughed, one sharp sound. You always say that, Caleb said. You never ask. You just take. Luke's eyes hardened. And you always say you're the only one who suffers, Luke said. Like I didn't lose anything. Caleb leaned closer. You lost nothing, Caleb said. You chose to leave. Luke's voice rose a little. And you chose to stay, Luke said. So you could be Dad's good son. That one hit Caleb in a strange place. Caleb's mouth opened. No words came, because part of him feared Luke was right. Part of him feared he had stayed not only for the ranch, but to win his father's love back. And he never did. Mr. Pritchard set the paper down, careful. That is the will, he said. I'm sorry. Caleb stared at the paper like it was an enemy. 6 months. 6 months with Luke. 6 months waking up angry. 6 months eating across from a man he wanted to hate. 6 months sharing decisions. Sharing money. Sharing power. Caleb's pride screamed inside him. Better to let the ranch burn than bend, pride said. But another voice spoke too. The ranch hands, the cattle, the land, Caleb's whole life. If he refused, it would all be sold. The Holt Ranch would become someone else's. Caleb's father, dead, had still found a way to control him. Caleb turned away from the desk and faced the window. Outside, the sky was dull and heavy, like it was holding back rain or something worse. Caleb spoke without looking at Luke. I will not run my ranch with you, Caleb said. Luke's breath caught. Mr. Pritchard lifted a hand, nervous. Mr. Holt, Mr. Pritchard said. If you refuse now. I said I won't, Caleb snapped. Luke stepped forward. Caleb, Luke said. Listen. Caleb spun fast. Don't say my name like you still know me, Caleb said. Luke's voice grew tight. If you walk away, Luke said, the ranch gets sold. Not just your ranch, Dad's ranch. Caleb's eyes narrowed. And you think I care what happens to you? Caleb said. Luke flinched, like the words slapped him. But Luke didn't back down. I think you care what happens to the ranch, Luke said, because the ranch is the only thing you ever loved more than your pride. Caleb's face went hot. He reached for his pistol again without thinking, not to shoot, just to feel control. Luke's hand went toward his own belt, empty. He didn't even have a gun. That made Caleb feel worse. Mr. Pritchard stood, voice sharp now. Audrey, stop, Mr. Pritchard said. Both of you, your father is dead. But his will is alive. And it has teeth. Caleb froze. Teeth. Yes. That was exactly what it felt like. A trap that bit down the moment you moved. Caleb let his hand fall away from the pistol. Luke's shoulders loosened a little. Caleb swallowed, throat tight. What do you want, Luke? Caleb asked. Tell me. Why come back now? Why not stay gone like you promised? Luke's face flickered, like there was a memory he didn't want to touch. I didn't promise, Luke said. I just couldn't come back. Why? Caleb demanded. Luke looked down. Because, Luke said, I kept seeing that night. Over and over. And every time the picture changed. And I started to fear. He stopped. Caleb leaned in. Fear what? Caleb said. Luke lifted his eyes. That I was used, Luke said. Caleb's stomach tightened. Used? By who? Luke's voice lowered, like he didn't want the walls to hear. There was a third rider that night, Luke said. I didn't see him then, but I've wondered about him for years. Caleb frowned. A third rider? Caleb repeated. Luke nodded once. Someone who wanted us to fight, Luke said. Someone who wanted one of us gone. Caleb stared at Luke, trying to decide if this was a lie. Luke held his gaze. I know you think I'm here to steal, Luke said, but I'm here because something was wrong back then. Caleb's mind flashed back to that night. The missing cattle, the shouting, his father's eyes, cold and broken. Luke storming out. Caleb alone in the yard with all the blame. Caleb's voice came out rough. If there was a third rider, Caleb said, why didn't you say this before you left? Luke's jaw tightened. Because I didn't know, Luke said. I only started to suspect later. And by then, you hated me. And Dad hated you. And I didn't think either of you would believe me. Caleb's hand shook now, just a little. He hid it by crossing his arms. Mr. Pritchard cleared his throat again. Softer. Mr. Holt, he said to Caleb, you have 7 days before the judge arrives. If you want the ranch, you must begin the partnership now. Today. Caleb looked at the floor. His pride told him to spit on the will and walk out. But his father's voice lived inside him too. Don't let strangers take what you built, the memory seemed to say. Caleb breathed in, then out. He looked at Luke. If I do this, Caleb said, if I agree, you don't get to act like we are family again. Luke nodded. I'm not asking for that, Luke said. Caleb stared at him, hard. You sleep in the bunkhouse, Caleb said. You take orders like a hand, and you don't touch the books without me. Luke's eyes narrowed. Equal partners, Luke reminded him. Caleb's teeth clenched. He hated that. He hated Dad for writing it. He hated Luke for existing. But he hated the thought of losing the ranch even more. Caleb nodded once, stiff. Fine, Caleb said. 6 months, for the ranch, not for you. Luke's shoulders dropped, like he had been holding up a mountain. Fine, Luke said. For the ranch? Mr. Pritchard let out a breath, like a man saved from drowning. I will write the agreement, he said quickly. Caleb didn't care about the paper. He cared about the feeling inside his chest. It felt like swallowing a nail. Caleb turned toward the door. We ride back now, Caleb said. No delays. Luke nodded. They stepped outside. The air was colder than it should be. The sun sat low like it was tired. Caleb walked to his horse, still not looking at Luke. Luke followed. No words, just boots on dirt. Then a sharp whistle cut through the air. A ranch hand rode hard up the road, dust flying behind him. He was young, maybe 16. His eyes were wide. Caleb, the boy shouted. Caleb's heart dropped. He knew that voice. He knew that panic. The boy slid off his horse, almost falling. Caleb, the boy gasped. We got trouble. Caleb grabbed the boy's shoulder. What trouble? Caleb demanded. The boy swallowed hard. Rustlers, the boy said. They hit the north pasture. Right now. They're driving a whole line of cattle toward the river. Caleb's blood went cold. That herd was his best herd, on his winter money. His future. Caleb turned toward Luke without thinking. Luke's eyes were already on Caleb, like he knew what Caleb was about to say. Caleb's voice came out tight and hard. Saddle up, Caleb said. If we lose that herd, the ranch is done. Luke nodded once. No arguing, no smile, just action. But as Luke swung into his saddle, the boy grabbed Caleb's sleeve, shaking. There's more, the boy whispered. Caleb's stomach sank. What? Caleb snapped. The boy's voice cracked. "They ain't just stealing," the boy said. "They got a man tied up in the mud by the river, and they said if we follow, they'll kill him." Caleb's eyes widened. A man tied up. A trap. Caleb looked at Luke. Luke looked back. And in that second, Caleb understood the horrible truth. This was not just a cattle raid. This was a test, a deadly one. Caleb's hand dropped to his pistol. Luke's horse stamped the ground. The river was ahead. The rustlers were moving. And Caleb had to choose, right now, what mattered more: the cattle or the man. Caleb's voice went low. "Luke," Caleb said, "if we ride in, it could be an ambush." Luke's eyes were steady. "And if we don't," Luke said, "someone dies." Caleb swallowed. Then Luke said the words that made Caleb's skin go tight. "And Caleb, what if the rustlers know about the will?" Caleb's heart stopped, because if they knew, then they weren't stealing cattle. They were stealing the ranch. And they were using fear to break the brothers apart before the 6 months even started. Caleb stared at the dark line of trees toward the river. His father's coffin was behind him. His ranch was in front of him. His brother was beside him. And somewhere near the river, a man was tied up, waiting to die. Caleb kicked his horse forward. "Ride," Caleb said. And the three of them thundered toward the river, right into whatever waited there. The horses ran hard. Cold air cut Caleb's face. Wind roared past his ears so loud he almost could not hear his own thoughts. Dust rose behind them like smoke. Luke rode beside him. Not behind, not following. Beside. Caleb noticed that and didn't like that he noticed it. "North Pasture is close to the river bend," Caleb shouted over the pounding hooves. "If they cross the water, we can't track them." Luke leaned forward in the saddle. "Then we stop them before the crossing," Luke shouted back. The young ranch hand, Tommy, rode behind them. His horse struggled to keep up. "Caleb!" Tommy yelled. "They got rifles!" Caleb's jaw tightened. Oh, of course they did. Rustlers didn't just steal, they prepared. Which meant something else, too. This was planned. And if it was planned, then someone knew the ranch would be weak today. Caleb's mind snapped back to the will reading. The day, the timing, the moment Luke returned. His stomach twisted. He didn't want to think the thought forming in his head. He forced it away. Ahead, the land dipped toward the river valley. Cottonwood trees lined the water. The late afternoon sun threw long shadows across the ground. And then Caleb heard it. Cattle. Dozens of them. Panicked, lowing and crashing through brush. Luke pointed. "There," he shouted. Caleb saw them, his herd being driven fast toward the muddy bank. 3 riders pushed the cattle. But Caleb's eyes locked onto something worse. A 4th rider sat near the riverbank, still, waiting. Now that man wasn't herding. He was watching. Caleb slowed his horse slightly. Luke noticed immediately. "You see him?" Luke said. "Yes," Caleb said. "That's the trap," Luke replied. Tommy's voice shook behind them. "And the tied man?" Tommy asked. Caleb scanned the river edge. Then he saw it. A man lay near the mud, tied to a post hammered into the riverbank. Water splashed near his boots. The river was rising from melted snow upstream. If the herd hit the water, the ground would turn to sludge. And the tied man, he would drown slowly. Caleb's chest tightened. "Who is he?" Luke asked. Caleb squinted. The man lifted his head weakly, and Caleb's blood froze. "Ben Carter," Caleb said. Luke's eyes widened. "The foreman," Luke said. Caleb nodded once. Ben Carter had worked for their father 20 years. He taught Caleb how to rope. He patched Luke's arm when he broke it as a kid. Ben wasn't just a worker. Ben was family. The rider near the post waved his hat slowly, like he was inviting them closer. Caleb felt it then. Not just a theft, not just a raid, a message. Luke leaned closer. They want us to choose, Luke said quietly. Caleb already knew. The cattle, or Ben. Money, or a man. And if they split up, perfect ambush. Caleb's mind raced. What would you do? Luke asked. Caleb looked at him sharply. You asking me? Caleb said. Luke nodded. Yes, Luke said. Because this is your ranch. Those words hit Caleb harder than a punch. Your ranch. But the will said it wasn't. Not anymore. Caleb swallowed. If we go for the cattle, Caleb said slowly, Ben dies. Luke didn't argue. And if we go for Ben, Luke said, they get away clean with the herd. Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. The herd meant winter money. Without that herd, the ranch might not survive the season. Without Ben. Caleb closed his eyes for half a second. He remembered Ben laughing beside a campfire when he was 10 years old. He remembered Ben lifting Luke onto a horse for the first time. He remembered Ben telling him, a ranch ain't land, Caleb. A ranch is people. Caleb opened his eyes. Luke, Caleb said, voice firm. We save Ben. Luke didn't hesitate. He nodded once. Good, Luke said. That surprised Caleb. You agree? Caleb asked. Luke looked straight ahead. Dad would, Luke said. For the first time since Luke returned, Caleb didn't argue. Caleb turned in the saddle. Tommy, he shouted. You circle wide and fire 2 shots in the air when I signal. Or make them think riders are coming from behind. Tommy swallowed hard but nodded. Yes, Caleb. Tommy veered off, riding wide through brush. Luke frowned. You trust him? Luke asked. I trust he's scared enough to listen, Caleb replied. They slowed as they neared the valley. The watching rider lifted a rifle across his saddle. He wanted them closer. Closer meant better aim. Luke lowered his voice. Ben is downstream from the herd, Luke said. We can't just ride straight at him. Caleb nodded. We ride toward the cattle, Caleb said. Then break last second. Luke's eyebrow lifted. You're baiting him, Luke said. Yes, Caleb answered. Luke studied Caleb for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. You always were reckless, Luke said. Caleb almost said something sharp, but instead he said, stay alive. Luke's smile faded. You too, Luke said. They rode forward. The rustlers saw them. The herd turned more frantic. The watching rider lifted his rifle and aimed directly at Caleb. Caleb didn't slow. 5 more seconds. 4. 3. Then, 2 gunshots exploded behind the trees. Tommy. The rustlers jerked in surprise. Now, Caleb shouted. Caleb yanked his reins and veered hard left toward the river. Luke split right, charging straight at the man with the rifle. A shot rang out. Dust burst near Caleb's horse's front legs. Another shot. Luke fired back. The watching rider ducked behind a tree. Caleb jumped from the saddle before the horse stopped. He slid down the muddy bank toward Ben. Ben coughed weakly. Caleb, Ben rasped. I got you, Caleb said, pulling his knife free. His hand shook, cutting the rope. The water lapped at Ben's boots. Rustlers, Ben gasped. They knew today. Caleb froze. Knew what? Caleb asked. Ben grabbed his sleeve. The will, Ben whispered. Caleb's heart pounded. Before he could ask more, a rifle cracked. A bullet slammed into the post beside Ben's head. Mud sprayed Caleb's face. Caleb dragged Ben down into the reeds. Luke fired again from uphill. Caleb, move! Luke shouted. Another rider appeared behind Luke, a hidden one. Caleb's stomach dropped. They were outnumbered. This wasn't a simple gang. This was organized. Caleb hauled Ben onto his shoulder and stumbled uphill through wet ground. Luke rode hard across the slope, drawing fire. 2 more shots rang. Luke's horse screamed but kept running. Caleb reached his horse and shoved Ben across the saddle. Hold, Caleb said. Ben clung weakly. Caleb mounted behind him. Luke galloped toward him, bullets chasing. "Ride!" Luke yelled. They rode. They did not chase the cattle. They did not look back. They rode to live. Minutes later, they reached high ground. No more shots followed. The rustlers didn't chase. That made Caleb uneasy. Rustlers always chased. Unless they already got what they wanted. Ben groaned in front of Caleb. They didn't care about cattle, Ben whispered. Caleb's chest tightened. What did they care about? Caleb asked. Ben's breathing was shaky. They asked about you two, Ben said. About whether you'd work together. Caleb and Luke exchanged a look. Cold realization hit both at once. This was never about cattle. This was about the brothers. Ben grabbed Caleb's arm weakly. I heard a name, Ben whispered. Caleb leaned closer. What name? Caleb said. Ben struggled to speak. Then he said one word. Caleb felt the world tilt. Because the name Ben said was a man their father trusted more than anyone, and a man who had been at the will reading, Mr. Pritchard. The lawyer. Ben's eyes rolled back. He passed out. Luke stared at Caleb. Caleb stared back. If Ben was right, then the trap wasn't set by strangers. It was set from inside. And the man who knew the will best might be the one trying to make sure the brothers failed the 6 months. Luke spoke first. Caleb, Luke said quietly. Caleb nodded slowly. We ride back, Caleb said. Now. Because if the lawyer was behind this, then the ranch was already in danger, and someone might be waiting for them at home. They did not slow the horses, not even when the sun dropped low and turned the land red. Caleb rode with Ben slumped in front of him. Every few minutes he checked if Ben was still breathing. Each breath sounded thin and wet. Luke rode beside him, scanning every ridge and tree line. Neither man spoke for a long time, because both were thinking the same thing. If the lawyer truly sent those rustlers, then the ranch was not just in danger. It was already under attack. Tommy caught up behind them, pale and shaking. I lost the herd, Tommy said, voice cracking. Caleb didn't scold him. He couldn't. We didn't lose it, Caleb said. They were never after the cattle. Tommy frowned. Then what did they want? Luke answered quietly. Us. Tommy swallowed. No one spoke after that. The ranch house finally appeared over the last hill. The long wooden barn stood behind it. Smoke curled from the chimney. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Caleb slowed his horse. Luke noticed immediately. You feel it too, Luke said. Yes, Caleb answered. The yard was wrong. No dogs barked. No hands moved around. No lanterns lit yet, even though dusk had come. Caleb slid off his horse and lowered Ben carefully. Tommy, Caleb said softly, take Ben to the bunkhouse and lock the door. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. Tommy nodded fast. What about you? Caleb looked toward the house. I'm going inside. Luke stepped beside him. We're going inside, Luke corrected. Caleb looked at Luke. For the first time since Luke returned, Caleb did not argue. They moved toward the house together. Each step creaked on the porch boards. Caleb pushed the front door slowly. It was already open. The smell hit him first. Not smoke, not food, gun oil, and fresh dirt. The lamps inside were lit. The chairs were moved. And someone had been waiting. Luke whispered, "Careful." They stepped inside, and a voice greeted them. I was beginning to worry you boys might not make it back. Mr. Pritchard sat at the dining table, calm, hat off, a shotgun resting across his lap. Caleb stopped. His chest went tight. You, Caleb said. Luke's hand drifted toward his empty belt before he remembered he had no gun. Mr. Pritchard smiled politely, like he was still at a will reading. Please close the door, Pritchard said. No need for neighbors to hear. Caleb didn't move. Why? Caleb asked. Pritchard tilted his head. Because tonight, he said, is a family matter. Luke's voice hardened. You hired the rustlers. Pritchard sighed. Such an ugly word, he said. I prefer assistants. Caleb's anger surged. Ben almost died. Pritchard shrugged. He didn't, Pritchard said. And that was intentional. We needed urgency, not murder. Luke stepped forward. You wanted to scare us. Pritchard shook his head. No, he said softly. I needed to see which one of you would choose a man over money. Caleb froze. Pritchard watched Caleb carefully. And you did, Pritchard said. You saved Ben instead of the herd. Caleb's heart pounded. You're insane, Caleb said. Pritchard leaned forward slightly. No, Pritchard said. I am loyal. To who? Luke demanded. Pritchard's eyes softened. To your father. The room went silent. Caleb stared. My father is dead, Caleb said. Pritchard nodded slowly. Yes, he said, but his wishes are not. Luke's brow furrowed. You mean the will? Pritchard shook his head. No, he said quietly. I mean his test. Caleb's pulse hammered. What test? Caleb asked. Pritchard folded his hands over the shotgun. Henry Holt knew he was dying long before either of you noticed, Pritchard said. His lungs were failing. He had months, not years. Caleb's breath caught. Dad never said a word. Never once looked weak. Luke whispered, Why didn't he tell us? Pritchard looked between them. Because he was afraid, Pritchard said. Not of dying. Of what would happen to you two after he did. Caleb swallowed. What are you talking about? Pritchard's eyes sharpened. The night the cattle were stolen, he said slowly. Your father staged it. The world seemed to stop. Luke stared. Caleb's face went pale. No, Caleb said. Pritchard nodded. Yes, he said. He arranged the theft. Luke shook his head. That makes no sense. Pritchard continued calmly. And he wanted to see which son was loyal to blood and which was loyal to pride. Caleb felt dizzy. He destroyed us, Caleb said. Pritchard's voice softened. No, he said. He revealed you. Luke's voice trembled. So he let us hate each other. Pritchard nodded once. He hoped you would choose each other instead of anger, Pritchard said. But you didn't. Caleb's fists clenched. You watched us suffer for years. Pritchard did not look ashamed. I watched two men refuse to forgive, he said. Luke stepped closer. And now? Pritchard looked at the shotgun, then back to them. Now, I make sure you don't fail again. Caleb's eyes narrowed. By attacking the ranch? Pritchard nodded. If you cannot stand together under danger, he said, you don't deserve the ranch. Luke whispered, You're trying to force us. Yes, Pritchard said simply. Caleb's anger rose. You don't get to decide that. Pritchard's eyes hardened for the first time. Your father asked me to, he said. Silence filled the house. Caleb's chest rose and fell fast. Years of pain, years of anger, all born from a lie. Luke looked at Caleb. Caleb looked back. For the first time, neither looked away. Luke spoke carefully. You didn't steal the cattle. Caleb swallowed. And you didn't betray me. The words hung heavy between them. Pritchard watched closely. Then he said something neither expected. This is only the beginning, Pritchard said. Caleb frowned. What do you mean? Pritchard stood slowly, still holding the shotgun. The rustlers you met today were hired, he said. But others heard the ranch is vulnerable now. Real gangs are coming. Luke stiffened. How many? Pritchard answered quietly. Enough to wipe out Holt Ranch before winter. Caleb's heart pounded. Then help us stop them, Caleb said. Pritchard shook his head. I won't, he said. Luke stared. Why not? Pritchard looked straight at them. "Because the 6 months already started," he said. "And this ranch will only survive if you two finally trust each other." Caleb's jaw tightened. "And if we fail," Pritchard answered calmly, "then your father's legacy dies with you." Outside, a distant gunshot echoed across the valley. Then another. Tommy's voice shouted from the bunkhouse, "Riders! Riders coming from the west!" Caleb and Luke rushed to the door. They stepped onto the porch. Dark shapes moved across the horizon. Not 3, not 4. Dozens. A real gang. And they were heading straight for Holt Ranch. Luke looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at Luke. No time left for hate. Only one choice remained. Caleb reached out his hand, for the first time in years. "Partner," Caleb said. Luke stared at the hand. Gunfire cracked again in the distance. The riders were close. Luke slowly grabbed Caleb's hand. "Partner," Luke said. And as they shook, Caleb realized something terrifying. The 6-month test had barely begun, and they might not survive the first night. The riders were closer now. Dust rolled across the valley like a storm chasing them. Lantern light from the ranch house flickered on the porch. The sky had gone dark blue, and the first cold wind of night moved through the grass. Caleb felt it in his bones. This was the night the ranch lived or died. Tommy ran from the bunkhouse toward them. "There's a lot of them," Tommy yelled. "I counted near 20. Luke grabbed Caleb's arm. "Well, we can't fight 20 in the open," Luke said. "We need ground. Cover." Caleb's mind worked fast. The barns, the corrals, the narrow pass near the cattle chute. His father's voice seemed to rise in memory. A ranch survives by brains, not bullets. Caleb nodded. "We funnel them," Caleb said, "through the south gate." Luke understood instantly. The south gate opened into a narrow lane between the barn and the rock wall. Only 2 horses could pass at once. "They won't all fit," Luke said. "Exactly," Caleb answered. Mr. Pritchard stepped onto the porch behind them, still holding the shotgun. He watched the approaching riders but did not panic. "You planned for raids," Pritchard said quietly. Caleb didn't look at him. "My father did," Caleb said. Luke grabbed a lantern and smashed it onto the ground near the north fence. Flames crawled into the dry grass, creating light, but also smoke. "You're making a signal," Caleb said. Luke shook his head. "I'm making shadows," Luke said. "They won't see how few we are." Tommy swallowed hard. "What do I do?" Caleb put a rifle in Tommy's shaking hands. "You stay behind the water trough," Caleb said. "Do not shoot unless they cross the gate. Understand?" Tommy nodded quickly. Luke mounted his horse. Caleb mounted his. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Years of silence sat between them, years of anger. And yet tonight, neither spoke about the past. Only the present mattered. The riders reached rifle range. A shot rang out. Wood splintered beside Caleb's head. "They're starting!" Tommy shouted. "Hold!" Caleb ordered. The gang rode fast toward the open north pasture entrance, exactly where Caleb expected. They thought the ranchers would defend the house. They were wrong. Luke rode wide and fired a shot into the air. The gang shifted toward him, chasing the movement. "Now!" Caleb shouted. Luke raced toward the south gate, pretending panic. The gang followed. One by one, the riders funneled into the narrow lane. Caleb fired first. His shot knocked the lead rider off his saddle. Chaos exploded. Horses screamed. Guns fired. But the gang could not spread out. They were trapped in a line. Tommy fired next, eyes squeezed shut. A rider fell. Luke rode past the lane, circling, drawing attention and splitting their aim. Caleb reloaded quickly, hands steady now. He wasn't thinking about the ranch. He wasn't thinking about inheritance. He was thinking about his brother riding through gunfire beside him. A bullet tore Luke's hat off. Luke laughed, a short, wild laugh, and fired back. Caleb felt something inside him crack. Not anger, not pride, fear, not for himself, for Luke. And Caleb realized the truth he had hidden for years. He never hated Luke. He had been hurt. A rider broke through the line and aimed straight at Luke's back. Caleb saw it. "Luke!" Caleb shouted. Luke turned too late. Caleb fired. The rider fell from the saddle just feet behind Luke. Luke stared at Caleb, stunned. Caleb lowered the rifle slowly. Their eyes locked. No words needed. They understood. Another shot rang, but not from the gang, from behind. Caleb turned. Mr. Pritchard stood on the porch, firing the shotgun at the last two rustlers trying to circle the barn. The gang began to retreat. Their leader shouted and pulled away. Within seconds, the remaining riders fled into the night. No silence followed. Only the sound of horses breathing and distant hooves fading remained. Tommy dropped the rifle and sat in the dirt. We did it," he said. Luke rode toward Caleb slowly. Both men dismounted. For a long moment, they stood facing each other. No guns now. No anger. Just truth waiting to be spoken. Luke broke first. "I was wrong," Luke said. "About you. About that night. I carried that guilt every day." Caleb swallowed. "I was wrong too," Caleb said. "I chose pride over my brother." The wind moved softly through the grass. Caleb looked at the ranch house, at the barns, at the land their father loved. Then back at Luke. "I don't want this place without you," Caleb said quietly. Luke's eyes filled. "I never wanted to leave," Luke said. "I just didn't know how to come back." Caleb stepped forward. And then he did the one thing no one expected. He pulled Luke into a hug. Not a quick one, not awkward. A real one. Years of anger broke in that moment. Tommy watched, stunned. Mr. Pritchard lowered the shotgun and smiled softly. "You finally passed," he said. Caleb looked at him. "The test," Caleb said. Pritchard nodded. "Your father never cared which of you owned the ranch," he said. "He cared that the ranch didn't destroy his sons." Luke wiped his eyes. "He knew this would happen?" Luke asked. Pritchard reached into his coat and pulled out a folded letter. "He left this for the day you forgave each other," Pritchard said. Caleb opened it carefully. His father's handwriting filled the page. "My boys, if you are reading this, then you chose each other over anger. I feared I raised strong men but lonely ones. A ranch can survive storms, a drought, and thieves, but a family cannot survive pride. The land was never your inheritance. Each other was. Dad." Caleb's hands shook. Luke read over his shoulder. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Caleb folded the letter. He looked at the land, then at Luke. 6 months? Caleb said. Luke smiled faintly. "Let's make it a lifetime." Caleb nodded. "Partner?" he said. Luke nodded back. "Partner." The Holt Ranch did not belong to one brother anymore. It belonged to 2 men who finally understood what their father had tried to give them all along. Not land, not cattle, not money. Family. And this time, they would not lose it. The end.